Welcome everyone to the October board meeting of Ignite CDA, Coeur d'Alene's Urban Renewal Agency. If you'll all stand with me and we'll do the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. And now I need a motion to remove item A3 off of the agenda, please. The Washington Trust discussion.
Make a motion to remove item A3, Washington Trust Bank River District 2018 note.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion on that or questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That motion carries. Thank you very much. And now is the first time for public comment. Is there any public comment? Seeing none, then I'll entertain a motion for approval of the minutes of the September 19th board meeting.
I move we approve the minutes of the September 19th board meeting.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion, corrections, additions, edits? All in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries. Now approval of the minutes for the September 27th special call meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That motion also carries. Thank you very much. Finance Committee, Mr. Arman, please lead that discussion.
I can do that. It's actually one of the shortest reports I've ever had, so this is going to be a short report today. First of all, for the balance sheet on the Lake District, under the assets column, the Lake District experienced $45,851 decrease in net cash assets from the month end of August. Other assets, the Lake District 2016 Series Note Reserve Account had an increase of $51 for the month of September. Liabilities and fund balance due to the arts line item reflects a decrease of $91,607 for the September payment to the Coeur d'Alene Arts Commission. Bonds item, 2017 series note line item, value reflects an increase of $1 million due to the September draw on the note. And all other parameters were, including the 2% credit due to the arts line items, were pretty much normal for the month. The Lake District P&L, the Lake District received $6,517 in tax increment revenue from the county in September. Agency funded initiatives, the downtown parking garage, $751,225. This value reflects the receipt of city funds totaling $300,319, $125,569 for the garage cameras, $174,750 for garage operating equipment. Under the Four Corners project, $151,477, and the Memorial Field Grandstand project for the design contract, $27,082. Professional fees line item includes payments to Rich & Associates for the Midtown parking study and HVS. Consulting for the Performing Arts feasibility study and legal counsel fees. All other P&L expenditure line items are normal for the operating month. For the River District, under the balance sheet, the assets, the River District experienced $62,566 decrease in cash assets for the month, August month end. The liabilities and fund balance, the due to arts line item reflects a decrease of $27,201 per the September payment to the Coeur d'Alene Arts Commission. All other liability parameters are either unchanged or normal for the month, including the 2% credit due to the arts line item. The River District P&L, River District experienced $5,281 in tax increment revenue from the county in September. Professional fees line item includes payments to Welsh Comer for planning efforts associated with the Atlas Waterfront Project, traffic study, and the Celtics Way project management. The value also reflects a credit of $43,900 received from the city for their share of the traffic study cost. All other P&L expenditure line items were normal for the month. So that is the financial report for the month of September.
Thank you, sir.
Now for payables. First of all, under Elam and Burke, it was a total of $8,787.85. Holly Troxel, $13,251.87, broken out $5,179.87 for legal counsel, general legal counsel, $4,310 for the legal counsel on the Lakeside Avenue auction and PSA and North Park property sales, and then $3,762 for the Stimson Mill Site Initiative and the Washington Trust Bank loan. Quarterly in 2030, $25,000 payment to them, which is the 2019 payment, which we agreed to. The Redevelopment Association of Idaho fiscal year 2019 membership dues of $1,550. That's a combination of $700 for the legislative contribution and $850 for the membership dues. Going on down to Southeast Way Roadway Revitalization Project, $713,372.27. The downtown parking structure, total for that this month was $1,374,506.35. And the Four Corners Project Memorial Park element total was $223,822 for a total for the month of $2,360,290.34. Payables. Quite a bit of payables.
Thanks, Mick. I'll entertain a motion to approve the expenses as presented in the payables.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion?
I do have a couple questions.
Yes, ma'am.
We have the skateboard park marked as a final payment. I know they're not done with the landscaping around the park, so
On the city side.
that's on the city side, so we're done with our
We're done with our
commitment?
commitment.
Okay, and that came in under,
That came in right at 350.
right at 350, okay. And then also the final payment on the Memorial Park element, does that include the savings that we allowed them to use for the other end of that park? Does that final payment include that piece?
No.
No.
No. We had that budgeted for this next fiscal year. So
Okay,
this
but
is just for our original commitment on the main project that they completed.
Okay, just wanted to
No,
clarify that.
We have a
Thank
little bit of
you.
money left over for that landscaping that we talked about.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Mayor?
Couple of questions, Tony. On the Performing Arts Feasibility Study, there's $7,900. Is that, are they done with the study? Is there more work to be done?
They are, they haven't invoiced us for their final effort, so they're still involved with a final addendum to the project that's being spearheaded by a council member that's going to gather a group of stakeholders together to give input on kind of how this might materialize into an action plan. So they are contacting HVS to still be involved in that process. So that's why we haven't gotten a final invoice yet. But the
So-
study is done.
Study is done.
From HVS standpoint.
And so they understand that there's a cap there,
Oh, yes,
not a continuing. Okay.
correct.
And then if we go on toward the very bottom there on the Four Corner Project, there is item C, North Park Drive subdivision. There's an amount remaining of $102,827. Do we have outstanding or bills there? Are we done with that?
I have not seen any outstanding bills, so I think we are done.
Okay.
I'll refer to our consultant for that, but I believe I haven't seen anything in a while.
Okay, all right. That's it. Thank you.
Any other questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries for the payables and the expenses. Parking, Commissioner Jordan.
Mr. Chairman, I don't have a lot to report here, but let's see. On the parking structure construction, we're still looking for generally being completed October 31st, but I think there's still a few little things that are going to drag into early to mid-November. Have you had any updates since I have, Tony?
No, it's probably, we're very optimistic for the end of the month, but I think reality is that we'll be pushing a bit into November.
Well, we're close. It's looking good.
The streets open yet? Streets open yet? I haven't gone by
It's
there.
open on one side.
Half the
We've got some limited access, so that's an improvement. Let's see, in the Parking Commission, they're still working on setting parking rates. The initial rates for the new structure, I think, are going to, I didn't bring my notes with me, but as I recall, it's going to mirror McEwen over here. And, you know, they're going to be, I think these parking rates are maybe going to, you know, be in flux a little bit here over the fall and winter. There's doing some more considering on those. One of the things going on is there's some debate as to whether in that lower level of the parking garage, where that can be secured, if everybody is going to have their own assigned spot, or if it'll be unassigned spots and maybe oversell it a little bit because not everybody will be there at once. So there's some different feelings on how that should be handled in the Parking Commission, so we're working through that. And of course, for $20 a month, you can have, you know, your monthly parking pass. You don't have an assigned spot, but you got your monthly parking pass. You can park somewhere in the garage, and then it's $75 a month is the initial rate that's set for being down in the lower level where it's secured there. So I'll have an update for you probably after our next parking meeting, after that's studied a little bit more.
Okay.
So that should do it. Thanks, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much. Tony, the Executive Director's report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to invite Phil Boyd with Welch-Comer Engineers to visit with the board about the next steps regarding the Stimson Mill Site Planning Initiative.
Okay. Okay, thank you, Tony. Thank you, Chairman Hoskins, members of the board. So I'm going to start with a little bit of a project update. You can see I've got my running agenda up there. Today we're going to talk about, review some of the steps that were completed, and then discuss the next steps. I always like to start with that image because it kind of refreshes everybody's memory about the project site, Atlas Road, and I guess for some of the folks that may not have seen this before, the waterfront public space, the upland public space, and the different phases associated with the project. Hillary pointed this out last night at City Council that the blue area over here is not an area that's in play. It is shown in this image, but it's not currently part of our project. A little update on what's happened. This was a major milestone, completing the master plan and the financial feasibility report. Tony and Danielle and I spent a considerable amount of time together working through this. It was nice to get it done, and we're all pretty proud of the product. The master plan is a standalone document. As we work, the reason they become two separate documents, it was important to us, and I think it was important to Tony, that we document all the public outreach we did in the master plan. And so the master plan is a pretty robust document because it has all the content that we did during the community outreach. Some of that content wasn't necessarily appropriate for the financial feasibility report, so Danielle had suggested breaking them out into two separate reports, and so that's what we did. So that's completed, and thank goodness. The URD annexations, the de-annexations, the short plat, the Southeast Way vacation is, that body of work is also completed. That was work that had to get done, and we started working on it. Tony and I looked at the fees associated with it, but the timing was such that we started working on it, and it's actually part of the proposal that you're going to see today, but that work is complete. I want to point out a little kind of an important idea I think that that came out of the process. This Southeast Way right-of-way vacation here, as we were working through early in the process, in the master planning process, I was looking at Southeast Way, and it's extremely wide because it used to be state highway. And there's this area between what was the original Stimson Mill site property line and then the edge of pavement, and it was kind of this no man's land. And we all know what happens with no man's land when somebody doesn't own it. One, you can't sell it, and two, it doesn't get maintained. And so I discussed this with Tony and the mayor and some of the steering committee, is would the city council perhaps entertain vacating that, because then it becomes part of the Atlas site. It's 100,000 square feet. So the council did process that. It's been vacated, so now it's part of the parcel. So Those of you that are in the real estate business can do some quick math. What does it mean to add 100,000 square feet of property?
2.5 acres.
Yeah, and so what's that worth, the value of that on a property? So we think it was a pretty good idea.
So the city did own it, then it's not no man's land.
Well, it was the right-of-way, and the city vacated it, but as you know, in the right-of-way, some of that, even though the city owns it, it doesn't get maintained.
Right,
So.
but there was ownership.
There was ownership,
Okay.
yeah, yep, but it was vacated and moved on to this parcel. A couple other updates here. These are some before and after pictures. This is what the site looked like. Before, there was 120,000 yards of material. I think the board remembers this idea as well. This was one of those things that woke me up in the middle of the night, probably more than a year ago, and I thought, gosh, this would be a heck of a great idea to see if we could get our hands on the material from the I-90. And so, long story short, the city council authorized that effort. It's close to $500,000 worth of import. It's probably worth somewhere around $1.5 to $1.7 million. So it was quite a deal, and you can see how much of a difference it's made on the site. People are enjoying it already at all hours of the night and day. The contractor was working at night, and he would routinely call me and say, "The police have got to come out here and get these people off here." He's, you know, the middle of the night, he's out there blading and compacting. He's done a really nice job, was very sensitive to the neighbors to the east, and made some special efforts to keep away from them so he didn't disturb them with the noise at night. So moving on to the next steps. You guys have seen this graphic before. It outlines the plan of action that was in the financial feasibility report. And at the end of the day, the purpose of the financial feasibility report is what can we do to the site to generate cash flow and income, because we need that cash flow income to build the future infrastructure, repay the city, reimburse the city for the purchase of that, and just move forward with the project. So that is what we're going to talk about today, and specifically these three items here: the development standards, the public space improvements, and the master plat of the project. This is zooming in a little bit and a little more granular detail. Excuse me. Where we're at right now, this is stepping back a little bit. Tony and Danielle will be going to the Planning Commission and the City Council to finish out the Urban Renewal District formations. And those are the three milestones that occur. Should the board authorize our work today, we would start right into the shoreline variance, the development standards, the master plat, and the public space and shoreline improvements. These are all pieces of work that when the board budgeted this year, it's funded work, both the design and the construction. The public space and the shoreline is a parcel that is currently owned by the city. So you have property owned by the city, a project that's funded, and you can see the schedule here. If we were starting on it tomorrow, if you look down here, the public space construction would be completed sometime in November of 19. So portions of it would be usable next year, perhaps, you know, the paths that you put in. The landscaping would still be growing or would be healing in and would winter over, but we would want to get the big bulk of the landscaping in August, September, and then complete the rest of it in November. The shoreline stabilization work would continue on past that during low water. Any questions about that? And Chairman Hoskins, if it's appropriate, I'm glad to answer questions as we go.
It's not a shy bunch, though.
Okay.
So we're out of time to do low water work this year.
Actually, it would be an idea. We would be moving into that time, and I'll talk about this a little bit in a second here. As we moved through the preliminary design and the permitting with the Corps of Engineers, we got into a little bit of a wrinkle with them. And we got kicked into the more complicated permit. We were trying to do the shorter permit, and I'll show you why that was here in a second. So the first scope of services is development standards, and this probably isn't something that you all deal with on a day-to-day basis. So what's the purpose of development standards? You can envision them as really a guidance document for what we've seen in that concept plan. That concept plan was kind of this big 50,000-foot view. The development standards really go in and they develop the character of the site, and it gets very detailed. It talks about the character of the homes, the types of homes, the look and feel of it. Where do the upland trails and waterfront trails go? All those really important details that make a great neighborhood. And this is a common practice in private developments that are very large, that may go on for years and years. Because you can imagine the inconsistency that may happen if you don't have a guiding document like that. And so it really creates a stable and adds value to the community. The other important point here is it helps inform the PUD. When we talk about the plan unit development, just think about it as the plan unit development gives you opportunity to have deviations from city code, setbacks, heights, parking, things like that. When you start working through the development standard process, that's a process that's occurring with the planning staff, the Planning and Zoning Commission, the city council, and the public, kind of indirectly. So exhibits come forward, ideas come forward, and you get feedback on them. And if you had watched or attended the Planning or Zoning Commission and the City Council meeting, Hillary kept getting questions over and over again. What about the PUD? When do we get to see the PUD? How do we get to participate in the PUD? This is kind of an introduction to it, because what will be presented is things like this. And this is an example of our GGLO, our subconsultant, that prepares content like this. You bring it forward. This obviously represents a much larger scale multifamily development, but you can kind of see the visualizations. You have big conceptual things like that, and then you get more detailed like this, where you're down into the townhome, and it shows block by block what is the appropriate use. And this is what their expertise is to do this urban design and develop these types of standards that when a potential builder comes in, you can hand them this document and say, here's what our vision is for this. And they can evaluate, gosh, this is right up my alley. Gee, I don't like it. And it's that type of anchor that a development standard provides to a large multi-year project like this.
So Phil, just out of curiosity, if the standards were in place and we hypothetically said, this block is going to be townhomes, and somebody came in and said, I want to buy this block and 2 others, but I want to put single-family homes in there, larger single-family homes. How much flexibility is there at that point in time?
In this proposal, and in our scope of work to you, that has been kind of a cornerstone to what the board and Tony have specifically told me over and over again. We need to have the flexibility to dispose of the property. So we might show this for a particular block here, and then there might be an alternate, single family. And if there is something that comes in completely off, within the development standards, there'll be a set of criteria for the board to consider. Because you all need something to kind of, if somebody comes in, we're not experts in land planning, GGLO is, and they can give us some criteria to say, gosh, if you put the pig farm next to the residential use, that's probably not a great idea.
Or if it was commercial, you're not going to be able to, some restrictions on what kind of commercial.
How tall it is, what the uses are, and those types of things. So all of that stuff is wrapped up in the development standard with the intent of just what you described, Commissioner Harmon. This is another exhibit that GGLO provided, because I obviously wanted to communicate to you all. Oh, I'm sorry.
Can you back up too, please?
Yep.
Just a quick.
One more?
This is an example of somebody else's design standards. This is not our design standards.
Correct. Yep, correct.
Just so everybody knows that, right?
Yep, this is just an example, because you all are trying to decide, are you going to authorize this to move forward with design standards? What is a design standard? What's in it? I didn't put the written word up here because nobody wants to look at written words. We all want to look at imagery. And so this is an example.
Correct. Okay.
Correct.
Just wanted to clarify that for everybody.
Good thing.
Just one sort of a question here. As far as the flexibility we have, that's really going to be determined by what kind of a PUD the Planning and Zoning Department allows. So that's where the rubber meets the road on it. So we have to see how much flexibility they feel comfortable allowing, or go in for an interpretation and change it.
Right, and I think what you can think of the cumbersome associated with going for an interpretation and change it. Now the board is in a position where, wait, we got to stop. You turn to your potential buyer and say, wait a second, I now have to go talk to the city. What Tony and I have talked about, and we've talked to Hillary about this, the strategy is to vet those ideas through this development standard process and through the PUD process, which is time-consuming and cumbersome, and it translates into dollars, which you'll see here in a second. But on the other hand, once you've done that heavy lifting, once you get through the process and get your PUD, the intent is now the board can move quickly and light-footed and make good decisions that reflect the community values and planning and zoning input and those types of things. This is just a little more detail that shows some of the architectural points of emphasis, roofing types, things like you would want in a high-value neighborhood. We don't want somebody putting T111 siding next to a beautifully sided home and things like that. So that's the development standards. At the end of the day, this is really what you're getting out of the written document, some of the points I've talked about before, and probably the most important point is creating and maintaining long-term project value, because 6 years from now, you want those people looking back and saying this is a good and high-value project. I put down here in the bottom right-hand corner, and this is consistent on all my slides moving forward. You have this in your scope of services and packet. The task number and the fee, $61,490. I did break out in here the consultants that are a part of it. Obviously, we're part of it. Heartland is the real estate consultant who you guys have met and known. The reason they're involved, and they would appreciate me saying this, the architects, as we all know, can be dreamers, and but at the end of the day, it has to translate into value. And those of you that met Matt Anderson from Heartland, he's very keen on that and understands how those things actually translate into value. So I didn't want the architects and the urban designers running off by themselves, and Tony and I discussed and thought it would be important to have the real estate advisors involved with it, so what we did translates into dollars. Or if it doesn't translate into dollars, it's a decision the board can make. We're okay with not, getting that type of value. Moving on to the master plat, I think some of you have seen plats and been associated with them. This concept plan is just that, a concept plan. It's not anchored or tied to anything necessarily in the real world. The master plat does that, creates all the lots, the road rights of way, the public spaces, utilities, and it defines all the phases. This is a public hearing process, so you go through that process, but once you have done a master plat, all subsequent phases of it are an administrative process. So you simply go through the planning and zoning staff, unless there's a substantive change to it. So that's one part of this. You can see the breakout of the fee down here. We talked a little bit about the PUD, securing deviations from city code. The intent is to get a better development, and that also is an interactive process. So you can kind of think of the development standards as an entry to it. It identifies things. And then, as Commissioner Jordan said, the PUD is actually where the rubber hits the road, and you're really getting through the process. And as I mentioned earlier, there is a ton of interest for the Planning and Zoning Commission and the City Council. Any questions on that? Keep plugging away here. The next big element is the waterfront public space. And again, you guys know we have completed the short plat of the entire 48 acres. The short plat was necessary to create the urban renewal districts because urban renewal district boundaries have to be on platted lot lines. So this is actually a platted lot line, and this is the parcel that would be the public waterfront space. You can see the elements that are included in it. I highlighted, Suzanne, this portion of the road, that commercial property, this commercial property, the parking lot, just to demonstrate that there's more than just the waterfront, because the world doesn't suddenly end when you get to the edge of the right-of-way. You've got to take into consideration the roadway. Those elements are involved with it. A few character elements that you've seen before. I put this image in. This paved trail, the bike trail, is part of the budget. Where you see the concrete, that would start out initially as gravel. And the reason for that was we just could not make the financial feasibility work to put in that paved trail. And so it's a future phase, and I think the board might remember some of those discussions we had. important feature we've heard over and over again is access to the water. And this is where we ran into the issue with the Corps of Engineers. If we were to run rock below the ordinary water, riprap, kind of the classic shoreline stabilization, we could probably navigate our way through the short permit. But you can imagine trying to get people down a set of steps and then across riprap. And that really wouldn't achieve what we heard the community tell us over and over again. So we opted and discussed this a little bit with Tony and the mayor. We need to get it done right and make sure that we achieve what the community asked for. Some other elements of the project that are within the scope of services, picnic shelter, restroom, that's actually the memorial restroom. With the picnic shelter, it's one integrated unit. They would probably be two separate units here because we have more space that we can accommodate. Dog park, children's play area. The schedule for this is, again, if we were kicked off tomorrow, it would be ready to go out to bid, provided we work through the Parks and Rec process effectively in May. That's a little bit late in the bidding season. You'd like to be earlier than that if you could, but we would be pre-marketing this project. It's an attractive project for a lot of people, a lot of contractors. This process is also iterative because, and this is a process that the mayor laid down when we were working through the steering committee, is it's important that it honors the Parks and Rec Commission and it moves through their process. And so we would move through that, working with Parks and Rec Commission, engineering, the Streets and Engineering Department. There'll obviously be lots of stakeholders involved with it. And here you can see the fees associated with it. This is the biggest fee in this current proposal, but there's 4,000 feet of lineal feet of park to deal with, and it is a sensitive and complicated area. This is the more boring part. I actually pulled this drawing out. This is what we used in our preliminary design, and it defines all the different types of shoreline stabilization techniques that we're planning to use through here. We're actually going to have to do some additional surveying work through there, which is in this scope of services, to survey every single tree because we don't want to unnecessarily cut trees down. Just again, some imagery to show you what we're talking about. Here is a footpath that people love to use. This is during low water. We took these last winter. And people love to use that, but you can see the erosion that it creates. This is an alternative similar to this. You can still get folks down to the water, something very simple. Maybe you run down there, throw the buoy for your dog, and walk right back out. So that's an example of one of the techniques we would use. On each side of that, you can imagine that there might be a little fencing at top to discourage people to start using other locations. These are the things that we spend a lot of time with the regulatory agencies working out these concepts. DEQ, the Corps of Engineers, Department of Lands, the Coeur d'Alene Tribe, the Kootenai Environmental Alliance. And so a lot of this has been preliminary work. Now, in this phase, you're getting into the real detailed design. Here's again some erosion that's occurring along there. That would probably get restored in that case into something like this, a little tow riprap to deal with the boat wakes. And then in this particular area, the slope, this material that you see here is not native to that location. It came from somewhere else and has been, during the mill operations. It would be laid back, and that would be a really good location for something like this in maybe a smaller scale. That also, and then the last area is the potential beach area. You guys will recognize this image on the right is NIC Beach. We believe, and the evidence suggests, that that's probably what existed here on the south end of the site. This is what the cross-section looks like, and you can see that it looks like something used to be here, and now it's there. And this was a mill pond. When you look way back into the old imagery, you can see that some evidence of the mill pond here. And again, this is kind of a classic old mill technique. We see a lot of this down in St. Mary's and some of those towns. We need a mill pond, go next to the river, dig a hole, and the water flows into it, and you store your logs there. The idea here is to restore the beach. That takes a pretty robust hydraulic analysis, which is beyond the types of skills we have in our house. We have a sub-consultant in here, a coastal engineer, river engineer that does work to make sure that what we do here doesn't create a bigger problem in the long term. It's pretty, it's hydrodynamic modeling is the technical term of the river. And so at the end of the day, what we're after is a set of plans and specifications. We've got to do a bunch of analytical work up front, also a little bit of iterative stuff with the city with regards to tree removal, things like that, access. You can see the fees are broken out down here in the bottom right-hand corner for task 2. And then the schedule would follow the earlier schedule I showed you. So just a little bit, Tony and I were working through this, and I was explaining to him about how we develop our fees, and you guys have worked with the architects, and they take the construction value and put an estimate to it. That doesn't line up with the way engineers think. We think in level of effort. We actually go through and sit down and work through the project with our staff. My staff actually put these estimates together, because if I were to put them together, they would not be very accurate, because I'm too far away from the work at times. So I work with my staff, we put these estimates together and come up with a level of effort and estimate the fee for it, and that's what actually gets into the proposal. When you take all those, this happens to be the piece of the beach solution, the one I just mentioned earlier. When you take those and compile them together, it ends up into this total fee for the project, and then Tony and I broke them out by the Lake District and the River District, because portions of them occur in each of the different districts. And again, this is in your packet. And those are budgeted in these numbers here that the board had considered 3 meetings ago, I think, 3 or 4 meetings ago. So that is a quick run through. I know I moved through fairly quickly. Tony asked me to be quick but accurate and complete because you have a long agenda tonight, and so I was trying to honor that request. But I'm glad to ask for any question. I think answer any questions you might have.
Questions from Mr. Boyd? Phil, just out of curiosity, is there still ongoing study being done up on the northeast corner up there?
Yes.
Where the Mount Hink is? Yep. What's any latest information?
So we went prospecting, and what we did is while the excavators were out working on this project, I actually hired them to go up, and without getting way detailed into it, what we did was we used old aerial photographs to establish what would have been the top of the bank in the pit. And we staked all of those out here. And then we went out with, and of course when we staked them, you go to Mount Hink and the stake is way up the hill. So the excavator had a heck of a time getting up there, but we got and dug some of them prospecting for solid ground. We found some of it, we've mapped some of it, and at the end of the day, our conclusion was we need to go actually drill holes. I didn't want to get into that, and I think if you guys remember, DEQ was going to be a partner, and then their funding did not come through, and so we're going to figure out how to piggyback on somebody else's project when a drill rig is nearby, see if we can't get it here. We do lots of soil work with our consultant on this project, and I have told them I need some help with my budget here because the board had set a budget for it, and when a drill rig gets close, we're going to go out and drill 2 or 3 holes to map that more accurately, and then we'll actually end up with a surface model that shows it.
Great, thanks.
Mm-hmm. Any other discussion, questions?
Phil, that means you're ready to proceed with phase 1.
Yes, with this, design standards and the public space design and the shoreline stabilization, those are in the master plat, those are going back to this overall schedule, those are the 2 that are, there's actually more ready to roll. When Tony and I first started looking at the scope of services, I had the infrastructure design in. I had this piece right here included. As Tony and I talked through the processes, we both kind of came to the conclusion, and Tony kind of pointed this out, maybe we should get through the master plat first and make sure we're on pretty solid ground and get through the PUD before we start into infrastructure design. which is good. It will push things off a little bit, but remember where we're headed is right here. And you can look at where this is. This is Q4 of 2019. All we need to do is, that's when sales happen, where you've got a deal inked with somebody. They're going to spend a bunch of time designing their stuff. We're going into winter at that point. You want to have your infrastructure for phase one constructed by the time they get ready to sell homes and open the door to their home. By not starting the infrastructure design right now, that might push it a little bit. But I think Tony's approach was probably a sound one. Let's get through the PUD and the plat first and make sure there's not a substantial change in the site design.
Thank you. Mr. Mayor?
Mr. Chairman, so are we looking to approve today then this process of moving forward with this plan? Is that what we're looking for?
Yep.
For today. So I guess I would make a motion to approve the Welsh-Comer development proposal for the Atlas Mill site as proposed.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Discussion. And again, this was all put into the 2019 budget. Everything is all right on track.
And that's why I asked Phil to break it out by district that you saw. So we have the money in the budget as per the board's commitment to this project, so.
All
Now
in
we
favor?
start spending money.
Aye.
Aye.
All in- Any opposed? Motion carries. Great, Phil.
Thank you. You'll be seeing a lot of them.
Progress. A lot of
Yes,
it.
it's
Nice.
good, and it's exciting stuff.
And you said you're starting tomorrow. So,
Dang,
don't
did
wanna
I
slow
say
you
that out
down.
loud? Yes. Thank you. Oh, wow.
Thanks, Phil. Mr. Chairman, next item I have is just the North Park Drive lots listing discussion. Just a graphic up there showing the North Park Drive area. We have 2 lots left to sell, Lot 1 and 3 as depicted. As you know, we had Lowe's Flat Fee Realty out of Boise been listing these lots for us. The listing for these 2 lots expired on October 16th, but they graciously extended it 1 week until October 24th for the board to make a decision on what to do next. Lowe's has offered up that they will list these lots for another 6 months for $199 per lot if the board were to commit prior to October 24th. As I shared with you, I've saw an ad in the Coeur d'Alene Press from a local realtor, Renice Sandler, advertising a 1% listing fee, which caught my eye because I don't see many 1% listing fees. So I called Ms. Sandler and chatted about these 2 lots we have left, and I thought she had an aggressive business model, and I just was wondering what she would offer up. So I shared her offer with you, and basically, she says that she will match any flat fee, broker fee that we would have, like a Lowe's fee. She would match that if the board wanted to go that way. Or she would offer up her services as a broker realtor to market the lots for a total of $2,500 for both lots. She thinks that's probably a better way to go to kind of get it out there, but it's still a choice of the board whether you just want to do a flat fee listing on the MLS like we've been doing, or have a little more realtor-defined interaction with the market. So she's very flexible. She just gave me that proposal and I shared it with you. We just need to have a discussion on what the board would like to do because the current listings expire October 24th, and then we're kind of fish out of water, and Bray can fill you in more on how that works in the real estate market. So we just wanted to have a conversation and see what the board's flavor is.
I've got a question. How many closings did she have this past year? I mean, how successful has she been in past listings?
I don't have a metric on that, to tell you the truth. She's been around for a long time. I think Brad knows her. She's
Yeah, she's a successful agent.
Okay. Just curious.
Track everyone's closings, but she does a pretty good amount of business. She's successful. What do we have, Tony? It's 1, and what was the other one?
3.
3. 1 and 3.
Tony, what's the zoning on 1?
it's the same zoning. It's R, I might look at Phil Boyd, R8? R8.
Single family home?
One's a temporary skateboard parking lot, I think.
What was? Yeah.
Was.
Mr. Chairman, do we, a couple things, not pertaining to this listing, but these lots, fence on the back property line. Is there a fence designed to go along the back property line?
There is a fence in the design that has not been completed yet, but yes, there is a fence.
Okay.
We have to arm wrestle on exactly where that goes with the city.
If the top of the berm or something has been in discussion, or?
That's where the arm wrestling comes in.
Yeah.
Got it.
And then the second part is we had some issues with Lot 1 as far as the grading and where the dirt was, and have we
No,
resolved
it
that
has not
issue?
been remedied. As was alluded to, the skate park developers kind of used it as a thoroughfare, and were a little rough on it, so it has to be kind of regraded. The lot corners have been reestablished, but it needs a little TLC to kind of get it back to where it was. So now that they are complete, we need to kind of work with our city partners to kind of get that buffed up.
So I would say that, and I'll follow up on a couple of these things, the regraded lot, we need to make sure that we get that done ASAP. And then we need to design that fence which is in the best interest of those lot buyers.
Right.
And
Mr. Greenwood is aware of that, and he's been working with a design consultant on that. It just hasn't materialized yet. And that includes additional landscaping on there, as we've talked about in the past, so it'll get landscaped and a fence. And we just need to really chat with our partners about what type of fence would be the best served there.
because I would have to say, if the fence was in, if that lot was regraded, if there was landscaping there, that's going to make that whole area appear to be better, and it's going to be a lot easier to market those two final lots once you have those improvements done. So I'll work on those two.
Steve, just out of curiosity though, with the way the Lot 1 is kind of set aside, you've got the alley there, and then you know, it's right up against Northwest Boulevard. Does that not look like more of a commercial lot than a residential lot?
You know, I had that same conversation with Hillary and what could be done there, and right now I don't think it could be. She said something about a neighborhood commercial. I had a conversation in regards to that, but I agree with you, Mick. It's just that how that lot lays and how it sits there is that it seems to me that some commercial aspect might fit well in there. Probably not a.
So is that the Fort Grounds requirements that could not be commercial? Is that what Hillary's saying? I'm not sure. But
We'd have to have a conversation with Hillary, but she suggested that it could be possible to have the neighborhood commercial zoning there.
If you had neighborhood, I don't remember everything on neighborhood commercial, but that would allow some real low-intensity use, like you could have a little neighborhood bistro or coffee shop, or maybe kind of personal service or something like that would fit in there okay. But I don't know if we're tied in with the other lots, if we have a problem with the other lots, if we change that zoning or not, or if there's really no connection. But overall on these lots, it's, as we talked about before, it's just, when we try and do something as a city, I knew this would happen, but I didn't know the extent this would happen. You've got a lot of requirements that were put on by the Fort Grounds neighborhood on saving trees and what could be put in there and stuff. And then we have urban forestry, and we got Park and Rec is worried about more about what's the easiest to maintain, you know, as far as a fence, rather than what's the most aesthetic or site obscuring that would make the neighbors that bought these lots the happiest. And so we're up against a lot of things with a lot of different hands that touch this that a private developer isn't, that would go in and make these lots as attractive as possible and get everything fixed up and sell it. So I think, yeah, anything the mayor can work out with the Parks Department is great. I think they were talking about putting a fence at the bottom of the berm, so the berm was easier to mow. And there's just a lot of things going on like that. But we've actually done pretty good. We've only got those 2 lots left, in spite of how inefficient it is to try and sell lots as a city entity.
So again, Mr. Chairman, Tony, on that proposal, is there any issue in regards to, so you reached out to Renee, she gave us that proposal. Does that open us up to, okay, well, we should have given others the opportunity for that same proposal? To be honest with you, I like the idea of going with someone local like that rather than the other Well, I mean, it's been successful so far, but it could be that we need a local person to sell those last 2 lots, and if she's willing to step up to the plate, I'm good with that. But are we going to get ourselves into some kind of a predicament because somebody else wanted to have the opportunity to bid on it too?
I talked with Commissioner Jordan about this, very possibly. I mean, that's one of the reasons that initially the board went with Lowe's Flat Fee Realty out of Boise, because we didn't want to kind of get into picking a realtor. You can still go that route. I just wanted to bring this offer towards you because I've never seen an offer this low, this aggressive from a local realtor. But yes, you will probably have that issue about if you pick a local person over another, there's going to be a question as to why, or I could have done it too, and you might have to go out for RFPs as we discussed in the past. So that's why the board initially went with Lowe's, because it was just simpler.
And that RFP process takes time, and I'm wondering, Mr. Chairman and Danielle too, can we give Tony the direction to maybe reach out to other realtors and pick the best deal for us rather than coming back to the board? Because if we don't, we got to wait all the way till, first of all, you got to put the RFP out, and then you've got to bring it back to the board. So it could be for December before we have another listing agreement if we went with a local person. Otherwise, I guess the option is we could just sign up for the what's it, online listing, whatever.
Oh, Lowe's. Yeah, he's a member of the MLS, but
Lives in Boise though, right?
he lives down in, Boise or Napa, and I mean, he's okay, but you get what you pay for. So a few people, not a lot, but a few people in the area list with him. It mainly suits a sophisticated seller that just wants to get access into the MLS. As far as any service or advice or anything, you get nothing. You just get access into the MLS. So it's not for everybody. It works for us because we have attorneys and have people familiar with real estate here. Just one real quick clarification. Was Renice offering to match Lowe's and do a limited service thing and then do more of a full service for the 1%, or no, not the 1%, the 2,500 for both lots?
Both. Correct. So she would
Both lots, not
would
each.
match Lowe's $199 for 6 months, or if you wanted a more traditional representation, she would do it at a discount rate as presented.
For both, 2,500.
Yeah, 25 for both.
So,
Danielle, can you answer the mayor's question?
I think you could give parameters to Tony and delegate to him. Might be it's a low enough dollar amount, certainly, that I think it's within your signing power already, right?
Right, it's just that, I would be in the same predicament as the board about picking a
So
realtor.
you'd like the board to pick.
well, if anyone complains to me, then I could say, you
right.
handled it, yeah.
That's right.
Do we know if there's others that do, say $199 listing? That seems awfully inexpensive.
There's
Others that are local?
There was, back when I researched this spring, there was 2 others. There was Mountain Bluebird.
But they're not local.
I think he was out of California somewhere, and then there was somebody else. I think Lowe's was about the only one in the state of Idaho. And Renice has been a well-known realtor in town for, I don't know, quite a few years, a couple decades or more than a couple decades. She started this 1% listing thing, I think, earlier this year, but actually we're not talking 1%, we're talking 2,500 for the 2 lots.
Right.
So you'd have to pin down exactly what she'll do for that. I think if you want to go the 199 route, I guess you could go with Renice and keep it local or stay with Lowe's. I don't know if there's any point in going with any of the other 2 cut rate guys that were out of state.
Mr. Chairman, I guess I think we probably need to beef up our marketing a little bit, so I would be in support of going with Renice's proposal at $2,500 for both of those lots. Again, you get what you pay for. For $199, you're not going to get any marketing, and it seems like a pretty reasonable deal to be marketed for $2,500. So I would make the motion to approve the proposal of Renice Sandler for $2,500 for a marketing program for both of the Park Drive lots.
And in the proposal to us, she outlined quite a bit what she was going to do.
I'll second that for purposes of discussion. Then I had a
Need
question.
discussion then. And now discussion.
And on this 2,500, Tony, would it be like 1,250 when one lot is sold and 1,250 when the other is sold? Is that how she do it?
Yeah, she just 25 for both, 50/50.
Okay. So you guys looked over a proposal and stuff. I mean, I'm okay with that. I just wondered how she was doing that. It would be a little less cumbersome to have somebody local than Tony just calls them up and says, change this in the remarks or add this, or can you do this or that? Because it's a little more cumbersome when we have to try and email everything back and forth with Lowe's down there. It's been okay, but I'm not opposed to trying something local. I also, somebody may complain, but 99% of the real estate community isn't going to complain because they're not going to want to take a listing that low. The upside for Renise is she's trying this program, and she may get some calls on it that lead into something else if they're not interested in that lot, or somebody may call her and she may get the selling side. There's a $2,500 flat fee listing side, but there's still a 3% selling side to another realtor, just like there is with Lowe's. So she might make out on that end if somebody calls her and wants to buy them. So there's some upside to her. That's why she's gambling on it, I would guess.
Well, just, had kind of a comment and question, but I'm good where we're at this point. For only $2,500 threshold, I wouldn't have wanted to go through an RFP. I mean, we'd spend that much staff time to just make the process happen. When I think in terms of an entity public entity going out and buying things, at a $2,500 threshold, I don't know if we even have to get 3, bids or something. So yes, we might get a little feedback, but with that low of a price, probably not, and it's a unique situation. So I think in the interest of, keeping it moving, give it a try. So I'm supportive of it.
Okay. Any other discussion?
Mr. Chairman, would we bring that lot 1 up to standard before we give her the listing?
Well, I think we probably just got to give her the listing, and then I've got to push on my side to get that stuff done.
I just get it on the market and try to sell it and have the the mayor twist some arms and talk to people. How long of a term did she want?
Is it a year?
6 months?
Year. Let's see, what did she say? She said 12 months.
Okay, we can do that if everyone's okay with that, or you can do 6 months or whatever. I would say of a lot of the things we've had to do over the course of time on this organization, this probably doesn't rate real high on the level of controversy or anything compared to some of the things that we've done. We've done a lot of good things, I'm just saying, a lot of what we do is kind of controversial too, so I don't think this is going to generate a whole lot.
Any more discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thanks. Motion carries.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Good to
Next
keep the
topic.
momentum going.
Next topic I have is Memorial Field Grandstand Initiative. Share this with the viewing audience. We had the bids received earlier this month. Low bid was from Walker Construction at $1.4 million, including add alternates. The base bid was $1.341. You can see on the screen there. As you recall, our budget for this was $1,296,000. Of that, we spent $68,083 for Architects West Design, which leaves us a net current balance of $1,227,917, which is, as you can tell, shy of the low base bid without the add alternates. I reached out to our funding partners, North Idaho College and the city, to see if anybody was interested in making up that difference and trying to put a little bit of money in the pot. Not a whole lot of energy from our partners, so last night Troy took this issue to the city council and the city rejected all the bids. And they're going to go back and look at maybe some redesign and rethinking about how we might be able to bring this renovation project to fruition in the future.
Chairman?
Yeah.
I may add that we're going to try to go through the process that we did similar to when we remodeled City Hall. When we got the bids back from City Hall, they were high, and then I can't remember what the process is, but we put out a process where we received bids from contractors, separate bids, and I believe it was a cost plus a percentage basis, and it came out that we were able to complete the City Hall remodel within our budget parameters. And I believe that it's Troy and Bill Greenwood's thoughts that we would try to go through that same process. What I want to make sure that we do is I don't want this project to go back on the back burner. Right now, we've got a great project going there. We've got just about everything completed there. It's kind of like remodeling your whole house and then leaving your kitchen a mess, right? So you want to complete that grandstand project. So I want to keep the momentum going there, so I'm going to make sure that both Troy and Bill are moving this forward so we can come back to the board with some different numbers and hopefully some lesser numbers so we can move this project forward and get it completed.
So that is who's going to be in charge, is Troy and Bill?
Yes.
Good. I was curious of what the next steps were going to be.
Yeah.
Thank you.
That sounds like a good plan.
Okay, so we'll be back again, and we'll have some more, hopefully some more details on the direction at next month's meeting.
Right. Thank you very much.
Great. I'm glad it's not going on the back burner. Nope. It's moving forward. Thanks.
Thank you, Chairman. So the next item for conversation is the Young Avenue property disposition discussion. Basically, I wanted to refresh everybody's memory, and I know we have some new board members on the board that weren't involved with this when this happened initially, but just the depiction you see on the screen right now shows the agency's Young Avenue ownership outlined in red. So we have two old residential lots here that had a triplex here that we demolished and a duplex here which we demolished. And these are what we've been calling for years and years Young Avenue lots. They have not been touched since we bought them. The agency bought them in 1998. The only thing that was added, we agreed to let the city put a little water pump station here in the corner of these lots quite a few years ago. So that's kind of the area that the agency owns behind City Hall. So this area was appraised in 2017 at a value of $960,000. So that red area was appraised at $960,000. The agency's total purchase cost of the property totaled $629,000. So following this appraisal, the agency was approached by the city regarding a potential land trade involving city-owned right-of-way property adjacent to Tilford Lane in the Riverstone development that is also adjacent to agency-owned right-of-way property in that area. Both of these right-of-way properties are abandoned railroad right-of-ways. This proposed land trade was initiated to the desire of the Tubbs Hill Foundation to obtain use of the agency's Young Avenue property for foundation-related activities. So we went down that path and we tried to make something work out there in Riverstone. So recently, this proposed land trade was withdrawn by the city, thus my bringing this issue forward to the board for reevaluation of what to do on this property on Young Avenue. So with that said, I'm going to also take you further back in time.
Let's see, first, Tony, what is that remnant property line? Or
remnant property.
The triangle-shaped piece?
No.
This is city-owned property.
Oh,
and this is city-owned property, the yellow.
Okay.
So the city owns the yellow. This is privately owned house by a gentleman in Spokane, then agency-owned property, and then the city-owned property, and then this is Tubbs Hill.
Yep.
And then on the what's the red on the upper part?
The red on the upper part here?
Yeah.
That's our agency-owned property.
Okay.
Excuse me, Tony, and then
Yep.
that would be city right-of-way, would be the alley there. So that's city property as well, I'm assuming?
No, it doesn't show that way. I think it's ours, or shared by this gentleman here. I'm not real sure of the ownership. The county's ownership map didn't pop anything up on that. So I don't know, to answer your question, Mayor. But I know the city owns this piece of it. So, back in 2015, the board asked Architects West to give the board, at that time, development concepts for this property. So we just kind of gave them carte blanche, come up with some ideas on what you think this property could do. So I'm just going to kind of walk you briefly through the ideation process that occurred in 2015. Won't spend a whole lot of time on it. So this is the area, as we just talked about. Actually, they included the city lot at that time. So they said, well, you could put maybe 4 single-family homes in there. Okay, that's one development option. Another development option is you could do multifamily, which is higher density. You know, this brings on its own challenges with traffic and, you know, energy around that part of town. Another option is combo housing, where you could have a couple single-family houses down here and then some multifamily there. Oops, sorry about that. My button's pushing it off. The next option would be some type of pocket housing. And this is the idea that the board liked the most. They thought, well, this is kind of low density, gets some good use down there, interesting concept. And it was viable in 2015, but since then the city has, I don't know what the right word is at.
They've done away, I guess the right word is done away. They've done away
with pocket housing. So that no longer.
It's on their drawing board to come up with a replacement for pocket housing.
So that was the board's preference at that time, kind of that lower density spread out look. The board also shared that you could do some type of commercial there. There was pros and cons to doing commercial, is that you have traffic, but it's only there during work hours and it's not there on the weekends. So it has some pluses and minuses. And then you had the mixed use where you had some, you know, residential and commercial. So you've got some pretty significant development back there with these latter ideas. So just wanted to kind of walk you through that, is that that's what the board was talking about in 2015 when this was going on. They kind of liked the pocket housing idea. And then the proposal from the city came along where we were looking at a potential land exchange. And so I've asked Welch Comer to, since they were working with us on the Tilford Lane initiative, to kind of give us an idea of what maybe a 3-lot scenario would look like over on Young Avenue. So these are the two basically the current residential lots that existed before we did the demolition. And this would be a lot that would be created over there on the undeveloped area. And then the rest of this area would be donated to the city for public use. There's that city-owned piece right there. So this little strip would be donated, and this land would be donated. And what I was trying to do is just kind of find a way for the agency to recover its investment cost of $629,000. So if theoretically, you know, based on our North Park Drive lot sales, if each of these lots sold for $250,000, we get up to $750,000. We'd net some costs out for platting and driveway stuff. We might cost us $1,000, so that might get us down close to what our investment is or was over the years. Just kind of a break even. Yeah, this is just an idea. It's a concept I wanted to bring to the board. I shared this with leadership at Tubbs Hill Foundation to kind of keep them in the loop on what we're thinking. But you know, the board, you know, has an investment here. You know, from a fiduciary standpoint, you have over $600,000 invested, and the conversation needs to occur about what's the best use here. Is it some type of middle ground like this, where some level of development, maybe it's not 3 lots, maybe it's 2 lots, happen to try to come back and get some of that equity out of it, put some of this property back on the tax rolls, or is there another conversation the board wants to have? But I'm bringing it forward to conversation to see what the board's energy is.
And in this drawing here, then, the city could donate that land to the,
I don't think the city can
or
donate.
the city land, and it could
How
be,
would that work? They're a foundation. I don't think the city.
the city owns Tubbs Hill now, right?
Stays city
Right, it'd just
land.
be
So it's just
become part
public
of the
space.
Tubbs Hill
Yeah.
Public Park.
Okay.
So, Mr.
Chairman, any of the proposed planting trees and just leaving it part of Tubbs Hill? Any of the proposals just to landscape it and leave it the way it is?
If the board wanted to gift the property to the city, then the city could do with what it wants, but then you'd be making a $600,000
Sure.
gift.
And at the end of the Lake District, what happens to the property if no decision is made?
If no decision is made, it would probably revert to the city.
You
But-
can stay with the agency too if the agent, it depends.
It could.
What did the Tubbs Hill Foundation say when you proposed this to them to keep them in the loop?
I don't know. I haven't heard from them yet. I just shared that with them. I'm sure they might be interested in sharing their thoughts, but
George, we hate to put you on the spot, but we'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
Thank you. Yes, I would like to address that question. I'm George Saylor. I'm the current president of the Tubbs Hill Foundation. And I want to thank Tony for inviting us to be here today and participate in this discussion about the disposition of this property. And we regret, as I'm sure you do, that the subject has resurfaced. And I also wanted to thank, again, the board, the Ignite board, for your previous commitment to keep this as open space. So we received this proposal from Tony yesterday, and the four of us who originally came before this board some while back met thereafter and had a fairly lengthy discussion about what we thought. We cannot offer a formal response today as to what we would do regarding this proposal because our entire board would have to hear it and make a motion of some sort at our next meeting. And also because I could not get in contact with Mary Lou Reed, who is an important player in this as well. So nonetheless, after our discussion, we do believe that the following comments would substantially reflect the original intent and likely the ongoing intent of the Tubbs Hill Foundation regarding this property. So a few thoughts about what we think and why. As before, in keeping with our mission statement, the Tubbs Hill Foundation Board's position is to preserve the Young Avenue property as open green space. We feel strongly this is the best opportunity Coeur d'Alene will have to add to Tubbs Hill while uniting McEwen Park and Tubbs Hill green spaces, creating a better interface between the two. As the city grows, so does the need for additional natural space. We feel it's in the best interest of the Hill, the citizens of the city, to see this particular open space preserved. Nor is the Tubbs Hill Foundation alone in its desire to do so. Ignite, it's yourselves, shelved a previous development plan. The last time this subject came up, the City Council voted to approve a land swap last October with the goal of keeping its property open. And so I think that the mayor and the committee, the council's support reflects constituents' opinion that the property remain as open space. And the feedback that we have received is that they overwhelmingly did support that concept. So therefore, as advocates for Tubbs Hill as a natural area, it behooves the Tubbs Hill Foundation to support what's been previously approved. Riverstone development, as you heard, includes open space because open space adds value to a community. And keeping this space public and open will add value to Tubbs Hill as well as McEwen Park. I would note also that the Tubbs Hill Management Plan, which is part of the city's open space plan, calls for the acquisition of adjacent properties as they become available. This may be our last opportunity to do so, one I don't think we should pass up. I think it's important to remember what a unique asset Tubbs Hill is to downtown Coeur d'Alene. And you all know that no other city has a lakeshore forest in its urban center that's as unique as Tubbs Hill. It's in many ways a jewel of Coeur d'Alene, and it makes the city unique, and it's a significant component of the appeal that it offers to its citizens. So it's an important part of why people come here. And there can always be more development, but the loss of natural space is usually permanent. We believe, therefore, preserving open space and young property as part of Tubbs Hill is quite simply the right thing to do. And we respectfully ask that Ignite continue to pursue other options that would preserve the young property as green space. And I don't want to make light of this, but I can assure you that if you could find that way open, we would be very happy to memorialize you with a stone, with a plaque, like we did for Art and Scott. Thank you.
Thank you. George, I have a question. You were saying that the part of your mission is to acquire property next to Tubbs Hill to try to continue to grow it?
I'm saying that that's what the Tubbs Hill Management Plan called for, as property became available adjacent to the hill to acquire it when possible, if possible.
So then does the Tubbs Hill Foundation actively seek to purchase lots as they come open then on the, like the houses that are on Tubbs Hill and stuff?
We were approached by that, but the $1 million plus price tag was beyond our means to do anything.
Okay.
George, is there a compromise here? I mean, I guess it's our fiduciary duty to receive some value back for these versus just a donation. And I know the last time we spoke, that there was a thought of paying for a portion of it and then a donation for a portion of that. Is that something that maybe you could go back to your foundation and see if there's a compromise so that we could keep this green space but yet still get some value?
Certainly, we would be willing to do that. And I'm not, like I said, in contact with Mary Lou yet, but I think that what she has to offer, plus what we think we could do, would be available if this were to remain open space in its entirety.
Thank you.
Dan?
Well, just to clarify that there is no burning time element on this, I'm assuming. It sounds like there's some I mean, good intent and interest and need some time to explore things, but it's not like we've got a 60-day time limit or something. I wasn't part of the board when that happened, but was aware, and I have to say, you know, right now, sitting here today, I mean, I'm torn between my first impulse, I'd say, oh yeah, great, let's make that more land for Tubbs Hill, but I also, you know, have a responsibility to what we're doing here and at least trying to somehow come close to breaking even, because the, you know, the intent of Ignite is not to create, you know, more park space for the city. Now, it might be a nice, you know, secondary benefit of something, but anyway, so for me at least, it's like, yeah, these are some interesting concepts, but if we don't have to decide real soon, then let's take time.
What kind of action were you looking tonight?
Well, I kind of left it open. I think Commissioner Arman's suggestion, I think, is very viable. If we could get some feedback from Tubbs Hill, because as to Commissioner English's point, we do have this in the financial plan. I have $750,000 in the longer-term financial plan in the mix for us to, you know, do the things that the board wants to do. So, but it's not in a very short time frame. So we've got time, like you suggest. But I think it would be great if the foundation would just, you know, give us some ideas on how they might be able to help us, help the board, you know, handle that fiduciary responsibility.
We just needed time to meet as a group. We didn't really have that opportunity yet.
There's no burning timeframe here.
So I want to thank George and all the other members of the Tubbs Hill Foundation. I think everybody agrees that Tubbs Hill is probably the #1 asset of the public in Coeur d'Alene. And thank you for your care that you have of it. And I would just have to say, from my perspective, I know Dan probably feels very similar, is that it would, we would need the Tubbs Hill Foundation's support on any project moving forward.
Well, we're happy to work with you.
I guess from my perspective, I would say have Tony continue to work with the Tubbs Hill Foundation, and for me to move forward on anything there, it would have to have the support of the Tubbs Hill Foundation. So that would be my suggestion, is we just can have Tony continue the dialogue with those folks.
Sound good?
I agree.
Yep.
Well, we're very happy to continue talking.
Thanks, George.
Thank you.
Yeah, good.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So the next item on the agenda is the Midtown property disposition discussion. One more graphic. So just to refresh everybody's mind, just a little background. Earlier in 2018, the board sought development proposals for the agency's Midtown property outlined in red in the graphic. So the 823 4th Street property and the bare land lots that are kind of now the green space. No viable development proposals were received at that time. An ad hoc team was formed to evaluate next steps for the described property. The ad hoc team encouraged the board to perform a parking study in Midtown prior to further discussing the disposition of the described property there in red. So the Midtown parking study was completed in September of 2018. So given the completion of the parking study and a new development that has materialized here recently with the sale of this property here to a private individual. This used to be owned by the housing company. It has now been sold to a private individual. And the agency's need for capital funding in the expanded Lake District area of the former Stimson Mill site, I thought it'd be a good time to bring this back to the board for further conversation about maybe next steps on looking at what to do with this property. So there's a couple ways the board could look at this. One was discussed as possibly looking at declaring this property surplus and going ahead and selling it through a sealed bid process like we've been doing here with some other property assets. Or the board could, look at this property, and once again, since there's been a change in ownership in Midtown, you could look to go out for RFPs to see if there's any new viable proposals that might come in that the board might want to look at. And if that were the case, then the board would If they did accept a proposal that met their requirements, we would work through a DDA process where the board would work with the developer through a disposition and development agreement whereby the land would be transferred to the developer at a fair reuse appraised price that would make the project pencil that the developer brings forward for board consideration. So I just wanted to bring this conversation back up to the board to see if there's any next steps, since we've had a couple of dominoes fall up in Midtown with the completion of the parking study, which basically said that there's no further need for parking assets in Midtown. It's just kind of more of a management scenario, management strategy, and the divestiture of this property here on the corner north of Capone's to a private individual. So with that, just wanted to have a conversation.
Tony, has the person that bought the property to the south approached you about potentially looking at our property?
Yes. Okay. Yes, he has, and he has desires. He desires to acquire our property for a bigger project in conjunction with that asset. But there might be other folks out there too that, you know, have materialized that might be interested in that asset also.
Sure.
So just out of curiosity, if he's interested in our property, how come Idaho Housing just sold directly to him, or he bought from them, and then we didn't hear anything about it as far as doing a package deal, or what happened?
They chose to divest of their asset.
Yeah. Now, how do they do it? Can they just sell directly to somebody?
Well, they're a private, nonprofit corporation, so yes.
Yeah. Did we get any notice, or they just did it?
They just did it.
Yeah.
So I guess our options are to get some appraisals and sell it through a sealed bid process, or do the RFP process.
We did the RFP about a year ago, didn't we?
It was last winter, I believe.
And the one bid.
Well, we didn't even really have a.
It wasn't, it came in well below, yeah.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Mayor.
do you think that, Tony, as when we did the RFP before, that part of the issue was we did the ownership of the Idaho Housing piece was in flux. Nobody really knew what was going on there. We've had somebody that's purchased that. Obviously, they would have to participate in an RFP process, but it seems like we have a candidate now, a viable candidate, that would be part of that process. Like you said, others could come in there, but I guess I would support going back and revisiting that RFP process, but I would like maybe some conversation on when we do that RFP process that any development that we would look at would have to have some public space built in there. You know, I could see somebody has a development there. Obviously, they're going to have to take care of all of their parking requirements, but that they have a piece of that bare land be some type of public space to be used for, you know, I always go back to the spot that's downtown, that little pocket park down there, and that's so darn popular during the summertime. But and that piece is double the size of what the one downtown is. So obviously, I don't think if there's a pocket park in there, it doesn't have to encompass all of that green space. But if there is a design that we could look at, and if we put out in the RFP, we would like to see a proposal that includes some public space in there.
So doing the RFP then over just selling it, we could control some of that.
So Daniel, if we do a DDA, we have the ability to control how it's developed, right? If an RFP is done, we can put parameters in, but how much?
It's the same process. So you do an RFP seeking a developer to enter into a DDA with.
Okay, thank you.
And it's
The other option is to sell it surplus. So those are
So
the
if we
kind
just sell
of
it
two,
surplus, then
it's just,
we're
you
just
just
wash our
sell
hands.
it.
Wash your
Yeah.
hands.
Okay.
Yep.
So as you recall, the last time we did the RFP, you guys did not put any restrictions on it. You just said, development world, bring us whatever you got. And we didn't get anything. So now if you want to do the RFP process again, just like Commissioner Whitmire said, if you want to put some caveats on it, now would be the time to do that.
And what do we have into this property?
How much value do we have in this property? We
Well,
have
what did we
invested $636,000.
So very similar to the young. Okay.
Yeah, we got quite a bit in it.
great improvements, though, in Midtown in the last year. I think that might spark more interest. I really do.
Tony, is that including the parking lots to the north, though?
No, so that's a good point, thank you. So these parking lots in blue are not part of the conversation, they would remain. And there is some conversation that I know is ongoing with the owner of 824th 3rd Street about potentially the agency of maybe acquiring this little strip of asphalt that is on the southern border of our 3rd Street parking lot to maybe increase the density that we have over there. That would kind of be kind of some low-hanging fruit. If that were to materialize, I think, I don't have a parking count increase, but it would probably get a whole nother row of parking in there just because of the travel lanes that would be created, just picking up that 10 feet of space.
And how many actual lots are there? Is there 3 lots there?
Here?
Yeah,
5 total. We own 5 lots.
5 lots, okay.
I do want to say that, that we commissioned the parking study, and when we got the draft of the parking study, we did share it with some people in Midtown who had some frustrations, I would say, about the process and the content of the parking study. And Commissioner Metz and I met and discussed it and reviewed the study. We did not discuss necessarily specifically the comments from the citizens in Midtown, but we did discuss about our interpretation of what the study was saying. And our feeling was fairly strong that a strong portion of the challenges that are being faced are due to a lack of code enforcement and lack of signage in that area as far as the residential parking and some of the other areas. And our conversation was that perhaps the agency, in addition to this discussion about this land that we own, but with the parking lots, is perhaps improving signage with the parking lots, making people more aware of the fact that they're free parking lots, and maybe trying to talk to the city about maybe we can provide some better signage on some of the residential streets or something like that in order to try to mitigate some of the challenges that area feels they're facing. And I can't speak to that because I don't live there, but I want to respect the fact that they reached out and expressed some concerns about that. And I think that whatever we do, the study by the professional traffic people, which I'm not one of, basically said that they feel there's adequate parking, but that we could probably do a better job with the lots that we currently have and with the parking in that area. So I think I agree with the mayor that whatever we do, they're going to have to provide their own parking for whatever they put in that space, and to have public space included in that as well would be a good idea.
Well said. And I agree that no matter what we do there, we could help out getting the parking lots better lit, better signage, including in the street. That should also happen.
I mean, the challenge is we want to do what's best for Midtown, for the city, for the agency, for everybody, and there isn't one solution that's going to make everybody happy. So I think we just need to try to figure out the best possible solution. I think it's going to be a combination of approaches, in my personal opinion.
Well, both of you are right. I mean, those parking lots are a real asset to Midtown, and they could be probably better managed and so forth than what they are. Hey, Tony, on that parking lot on 3rd Street, on the south property line, there's no car parks there right now, is there?
There is. It's nothing defined, but it's used by the tenants of that building.
Right. So how many? Yeah. So that's basically an open aisleway there. So
it's their driveway type.
Theoretically, I mean, if you got another 20 feet, that would give us another row of parking. I don't know how many feet you're talking about.
That's
assuming that would be 24. You need 24 feet between the parking stalls, you know, for a driveway. So.
There's 23 feet that's available there. I think that there was original confusion because we felt that we had, without a survey, we had felt that we had owned everything that was paved, when in reality we didn't. They moved that space back to where their property line was. If we were able to reclaim that 23 feet, there could be 3 rows of parking. You would have a row at each property line and then a road down the middle,
Yeah.
which would add somewhere between 16 and 20 spaces to that lot. So
Yeah,
you
that's
would
a lot.
you would increase the capacity of that lot by 50%.
Well, I'd be in favor of doing that RFP. I think the economy's probably even better now than it was back then, and maybe this gentleman that bought the property from Idaho Housing will want to make a proposal in the RFP.
Well, Brad and Steve, you guys work in real estate. If we write into the RFP public space that is going to be set aside, do we decide how much, how many square feet? Or do we say a portion? How do you define that? And then if, the next step of that is how much value do we lose because we are requiring that it cannot be developed?
I think you'd have to take a value of that land, so you take a value of the bare parcel, and if you're gonna take a quarter of it, that's probably a dollar amount that would come off of that you would give a developer a credit for that, for developing that. You know, they're also gonna pay to develop whatever they're gonna put there for a public space, but you can define whatever parameters you want for what the size of that would be. I think you have to go to, okay, for something like this, is it 5,000 square feet? Is it whatever it is? And I think that you'd probably have to look to maybe a landscape architect to say, okay, give us an idea of what an average public space pocket park is.
Pocket Park's about 5,000 square feet. I
And
think,
then
very
we would
close.
get, the developer would get a credit back for that from
Right.
purchase, okay?
Yeah. So Tony, so I was gonna say, today then, when we're making a decision, should we go to the detail of an RFP? Should we give you direction to craft an RFP and bring it back next time? But today's decision would be to give you a go-ahead to get appraisals on that. The one, you probably just need to get an update.
Well, I probably wouldn't get the appraisals. If you go the RFP route, you would just give me direction to go ahead, either to go ahead and update the last RFP with this new restriction in it and go forward and, issue it, or develop it and bring it back for your consideration before issuing. But we wouldn't do any appraisal at this time until we get a project that the board likes, and then it's a special fair use appraisal that would happen.
Okay.
I'd just say in general a couple of things. Any encumbrance we throw on that property is going to take away some desirability and some value. And that's a given. But I'm okay if we want to try and keep a pocket park there, I'm okay with that. But I would say if we do that, we should define it, because the more we define it, the better it is, because if we just leave it pretty general, then I think whoever might make a proposal to us is grasping at what we want. I think we better just say we need the north so many feet, or we need something. Otherwise, we're going to
Take a picture of
get.
the one on Sherman Avenue and say it needs to look just like this.
It's my understanding, though, that we've tried to purchase the Pocket Park several times, and we pay the taxes on that each year to use it. Wouldn't we want ownership of that Pocket Park in Midtown?
The
Would
one
we
on
retain
Sherman.
control of that?
The one on Sherman is an unusual animal. You've got a family that doesn't want to sell it, but they let the city use it, so then they pay the taxes, or they get a tax exemption on it. But
We would like to own it.
This would be different, I guess, yeah.
I guess,
But-
then too, any developer that's going to develop that is going to develop the public space, not only just for the outside general public, but they're going to develop it to enhance their property. So say if somebody builds some residential there, they're going to want it for the use of their, if it's a rental, tenants or buyers or whatever, so they're going to use it too.
Sure.
But they're also going to allow the public to be able to use it. I guess I have a tough time right now just throwing out a number that we want X amount of square feet for a public space, because we'd just be guessing.
Is there any kind of, I don't want to say standard, but any kind of guideline or something about density versus public space or something in a mixed, in that sort of situation? I would think there, in the world of the architects or something, designers, there would be.
Well, I think one of the things the board could do is just let the creative market come back to you with their ideas. If you say you want some level of public space involved in the project, see what they bring forward and see if what they bring forward meets your expectations, or maybe you could pick that and then work with them to come up with more of what you would visualize, instead of kind of trying to define something at this time, you might just want to let the creativity come to you.
The only thing I was getting at is if we have something in mind some of us want, I just think, we don't have to, but I just think it's better if you define it. If we just put an RFP out and say we want some public space in there, you may get something the size of that stage right there, where they put a few benches in and a little piece of public art, and it's just kind of a little public sitting kind of nice area, and that may not be what we're thinking. So that's, I don't care if we take a try and see what we get, but you don't know what you're gonna get if we don't give a person some kind of parameters on what the public space is, so.
So should we just
That's my
define it
input.
as a pocket park?
And
I mean,
we could-
once again, I think that's pretty,
We could talk to the Parks Department, talk to Hillary, get some ideas, but
I guess we could always, if you got an RFP, you could, and they designed a pocket park and it wasn't as big as we wanted to, thought it should be, we could just say, we like it, but we want this bigger. We want
Yeah.
it double the size.
I say at least give them some kind of direction on what we're looking for. So they
We'll reference
know
our
we're
pocket
looking
park
for some
downtown.
green
Yeah.
space that's big enough to do something, because I actually wasn't being sarcastic, I mean, I'm serious. They seriously may think a little thing like that might be enough of a public space with a little sitting area, and that may not be what we want.
I'd set a parameter, or some type of parameter, a minimum at least. Well, you can see what comes from it.
No, I mean, what would that be?
I would use a comparison to our current pocket park. I would say 5,000 square feet approximately. That's about 25% of the lot, isn't it?
It's a good chunk.
Yeah, it is a good chunk. Maybe just send it out for RFP and see what comes, and then maybe you can tweak it after that.
I'll make a motion that we put this out for an RFP and possibly put in that we want some public space, but let the RFP dictate what we see.
I'll second that.
So, let me capture this correctly. So just put the RFP out saying that there's a desire for an element of public space, and just let them come back without any parameters.
Correct.
Do you want to say, I mean, does pocket park mean something different than public space?
I think, I kind of agree with Tony. I think you let the developer come back and see what they're gonna propose, and then we can start working from that.
Tweaking it.
Yeah.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion?
Question. Do you want me to go ahead and do it, or do you want me to bring it back next month and let you look at it before I issue it?
Just do it.
Just do it.
Just go, okay. We'll go.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Excellent.
Finally, Mr. Chairman, just a couple of initiative updates. Celtice Way Road revitalization. They're having some challenges with their landscaping contractor. From what I've been told, the Atlas Roundabout Center Islands plantings, irrigation, mulch, and rock replacement should have been done by October 8th. I haven't been out there to check.
I just
Hopefully,
drove by there yesterday, and that is
that is done.
It looks pretty good.
Looks pretty good, good. So the week of 10/15, seeding of all other areas, and the time frame of October 15th to the end of the month, project cleanup and punch list items. So they're looking to button this guy up by the end of the month.
So is every space between the road and the path supposed to have something on it between?
Mean something, landscape something?
Yeah. Because
We're doing the same thing.
I was wondering as I was driving through, I can see in the center between the two directions that's going to be natural, because there's this obvious spot where the landscaping stops after the crosswalks in the center part of Celtice, but I was curious about on
The strips.
the strips on the side, because you'll have the curb, and then you have weeds, and then you have the path. And I'm just curious if it's meant to be anything more than weeds the whole way down.
I cannot answer that for
You
you.
don't know? Well, they're not pretty weeds, and they get really tall.
I know, I just don't know.
Okay, you don't know,
I would-
okay.
I would hope so, but I don't know.
Okay.
Do we need to go back and revisit the bid and just make sure that we're getting what we originally bid out?
Well, the city's doing that. I mean, it's a city contract, and they're the ones that are making sure that everything
managing
is getting,
But aren't we the ones that's paying for it?
yes, indeed.
Okay, then I think we need to have,
Well, I'm looking at what is getting paid, but it's from a specialist standpoint, that's the expertise that we employ through Welch Comer and the city to Phil, yep, Phil has a comment?
I'll just, it's supposed to be in the areas that I think I heard you to describe, dryland grass seed. So it's not supposed to be weeds, so the weeds will be killed.
Okay.
And then it will be hydroseeded with a dryland grass seed that's low growing, and and as you move into this time of the year, it's getting a little bit late for that to take. So
That's not
it'll-
irrigated.
It's not irrigated. That was one of the budgetary issues.
Right.
That it would have been great to irrigate it and put grass in there, put other type of landscaping, but it just couldn't fit in the budget.
Makes sense.
Yeah, so it was dryland grass seed, but I anticipate it will be a warranty issue, because it's not going to take this year, so it's going to need some tender loving care next year when the growing season starts in the spring.
Thanks, sir. Okay.
Mr. Chairman, so Tony, we're probably going to have a holdback on that.
Oh, we do. I mean, you could look on the payable sheet, you see we kind of have at least $400,000 still in retainage and expenses to pay.
And that holdback's probably going to go through spring?
It depends on how the city wants to manage that, but yes, I'd imagine so.
That'd be a good idea to handle the warranty issues.
Finally, Mr. Chairman, just an update on North Idaho Collaborative Education Facility. There has been some project-related issues that have caused a delay in the expected completion date. The original completion date was February 2nd, 2019, and it has been extended to April 29th. So about 3 months longer than planned due to some site issues and some issues that are going on in the project. So it's still mostly on budget. I think they have about $80,000 in change orders, but it's still moving forward, and I think the institutions are not extremely pleased with the delay, but it is what it is. So that's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Ready? Thanks, Tony. Board commissioner comments. I have one. See, what was it, October 10th, we did the grand opening for the skate park, and there was a couple hundred people there. There was many booths, vendor booths. I mean, everything from Daft Badger to Dutch Bros Coffee was there, and there was a great ceremony. They had a stage set up with the bands and stuff, and the skateboard community was there and was very appreciative, and they gave thanks for all your support and stuff. They gave us a nice little trophy that one of the skateboarders makes, and Woody and I each got one of those. And so just thank the skateboard community very much, and we're glad it's a great project. When I drove in here tonight, there was probably 40, 50 kids in there, and bicycles and everything else. It was fun.
Well, and that's made out of skateboards, right?
That's correct. This is made out of laminated skateboards then, and then carved into our state.
Cool.
That's all I have. And now it's time for public comment. Any public comment? Seeing none, then I'll entertain a motion to enter an executive session.
I move to go into executive session under Idaho Code 74-206 subsection 1B and 1F.
I'll second that.
Consider the evaluation of the Ignite CDA Executive Director and to communicate with legal counsel regarding pending litigation.
Yes.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion?
Roll call.
Roll call.
Harmon.
Yes.
Whitmire.
Yes.
Jordan.
Yes.
English.
Yes.
Garcia.
Yes.
Hoskins.
Yes.
Jackus.
Yes. We're in executive session, and that's a wrap.